everybody. I am here with another episode of Tattoo Consciousness. Will you go ahead and introduce yourself, your style, where you work, and what influences you?
So my name is Rayne Rose, and I'm the owner of the Wolf Den Custom Tattoo in Denver, Colorado. And I've been around for 11 years, so I think just life inspires me. So I go through ebbs and flows of different styles and kind of find myself attracted to different things at different times. But I think that's the natural progression of growing in art.
You open your own shop and you've owned it. How long have you owned it and been maintaining?
6 years. So I feel like surviving the pandemic, I should get like for every year in the pandemic, like five, like a dog. So So it feels way longer surviving the pandemic as a small business owner.
How was it with the pandemic and owning your own shop?
Obviously stressful for any small business owner. Like, you're not only worried about yourself, you're worried about everyone that trusted you. So I took it very seriously and I worked every day like I was working at the shop to get grants. And so I was able to score a really good grant. So the women at my studio didn't have to pay rent and they were able to kind of skate by until we could open again.
That's awesome. How many people do you have at your shop currently?
I have 5 right now.
How is it maintaining that and life and, like having a partner and everything? It's difficult.
What life?
That's true.
So I am fortunate enough to work with my spouse. So my wife, she runs the front half of the tattoo shop, which is the art gallery. So she runs that with like local fine artists. And then I work in the back with the tattoo artist. And so we are able to be around each other. That doesn't necessarily mean we're like connecting, but at least we get to be in proxy of each other. So
Whenever you first opened the shop, did you guys open it together? Was it like a shared effort?
it wasn't. So I opened it before I met her. And I was running it, but I really think like just like, anyone that enriches your heart is going to enrich everything you love. And so she came in and really like took the Wolf Den to another elevated level just by like, hey, this is like an outside perspective. This is how you can market. These are all these other facets you can tap into. So she actually, I think, made the Wolf Den even stronger.
So did you guys have the art gallery in the front whenever you first started, or did she kind of?
That was my dream. And so it was like starting to come into fruition. And then she was like, all right, let's do this and let's refine it.
Do you ever get tired working with your partner every single day? Because then you go home and see them. I've met a lot of tattooers who are married and work at the same shop, and sometimes it's kind of hard because you never get that separation. And sometimes I think that's good.
I think, yeah, it's definitely healthy. I mean, you can be with your best friend all day, every day, and it's not healthy, right? Like your favorite person, you still need space. But it's like when we're at work, we work so much. It's like we're around each other, but we're not really there. So it's like we're not really in each other's way. And so it's like I find that we have like pretty healthy boundaries, even though we're in proxy. So I feel very fortunate. And just like any relationship, it's a lot of communication.
So, when did you start tattooing? Like what year, and what was your apprenticeship like?
Gosh, so it was like 11 years ago. So that was like during the times where I had to make my own needles and I had to build my own coil machine. I had to do it for 2 years. The year that was usually like the commitment. Like the first year, you're not even allowed to touch a tattoo machine, and then the second year you can. So it was just like roses, 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 draw roses, and all that. And then it was pretty tough. It was like I would get a call at like 2 a.m. and they'd be like, apprentice, we need a ride home because we're drunk. And I'm like,
Oh no.
okay. And like, if you want your job, you'll do it. And at that time, I mean, it's still very similar in regards to like it is hard to get an apprenticeship. And so you do what you can, or you have that fear that you're never going to get that opportunity again. And so you just have that mantra like art is bigger than this moment. I can do this. And I'd drive them home, or they'd have a tutu for me and I'd have to like scrub their wheels for them. Like it would be like all hazing that had nothing to do with art. And I think it was just like we experienced trauma, so we're going to pass this on to this person,
Yeah.
which is like unhealthy and weird behavior that used to be acceptable then.
Yeah. Do you think it's changed and it's getting better now?
I mean, yes, I think it's shifting because there are more creatives going into the tattoo artist industry that are like less tolerant of that behavior. Like, since there's so many more people that haven't had to go through that, they're like, why would you ever treat someone like that? And so it gives people a safe place to land Whereas like maybe the people who went through that trauma, they just kind of write it off and coin the phrase of like, you're paying your dues
Mhm.
to do this. When it's like, that literally has nothing to do with being a creative. That's just passing your trauma on. And so it's like there's more people coming in that have no idea what that's like, so they'll never pass it on. So it's finally starting to like dilute, but it's still out there.
Why did you decide to start your shop? Whenever you were apprenticing, did you ever think, I want to make a shop that is based on like my beliefs more than like what you were going through?
Honestly, I think at the time I was just trying to get through it because I just knew that I was in love with this medium. Um, but as I kept going from like shop to shop throughout my career, I think I kept thinking it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. I'm gonna find a more refined shop. It's gonna be more elevated. And it just kept becoming a lateral movement. And I was like, I don't think it gets better. So there has to be someone that's gonna make it better. And so I think I was like, had that realization I should probably be the change. Like, why do I keep trying to put this on someone else when I can take responsibility and try to forge that path? So, did I want to do it? Not necessarily, but I hit a point where I was like, this is ridiculous. It's got to happen.
What
So,
was the hardest thing whenever you were opening your shop, to like any obstacles that were really difficult for you?
yes. So, getting enough women. Like at the time, like there, even 6 years ago, there were very, very few women in the tattoo industry. So it's like I, built this place, but I was just like, oh my gosh, I think I only know of two other women in Denver that tattoo professionally. Like, how am I going to have a house that doesn't house anyone? Like, and how do I move forward? And then you add being queer on top of that, so it just kind of makes this target honestly for hate. And so I had a lot of other shops be very, very hateful, neighboring shops like threatening us, rocks through the window, stuff like that. So it's like not only are we female, we're queer, so it's like it's just even more difficult. I can't even imagine what it's like to be a BIPOC tattoo artist and dealing with that. So it's just yeah, trying to find the right people and then trying to maintain the safety within the studio.
Do you have any similar problems today, or is it pretty like safe and accepting now?
Yes and no. So it's really interesting how like the pendulum kind of swings the other way. So now that this place has been really renowned for being, that term safe space, it's almost like all the humans that have been seeking out a safe space, they've spent a lot of their life like queer folk, anyone who's like a little outside of the box of like, people that consider like cis norm or whatever. They've experienced a lot of, you know, a lot of rejection, a lot of like pain, a lot of hurt with their families, with, society. And so they think that they're going to have that space in our shop, but we still, as artists, have to maintain healthy boundaries. And even if we don't align with the art, we can kindly say, no, maybe that's, and that little bit of rejection triggers that clientele. And they're like, it's like kind of like a whiplash of like, well, fuck you. I thought this was a safe space. And then they all, kind of want to burn it down. So it's like we work so hard to build this space for everybody. But if we don't kindly align with that one person, they so quickly want to just destroy it. It's so interesting. So I never thought my own community would be so upset with certain things like that. So now I'm trying to like recalibrate. This is a safe space for everybody, especially the artists. Like they choose to work here. And so we'll see how that goes.
How do you maintain healthy boundaries with clients? Because, like, some of them might want to hang out outside or try to be your friend because they think, oh, you're talking to me, and then the pain receptors are going off. And
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of intimate connection, right? And it's like we do share a lot of things with each other. And so it's like I do become friends with some of my clients. Like we do really click, but thankfully, I don't really have to make any excuses. Like I am so busy. And so if that person, is very flexible and they can have coffee with me whenever I have time, then that is my person, and I'm their person. But maintaining the boundaries is just like having conversations. Like, I really appreciate your business. Thank you for supporting me. I can't wait to see you again. Like, I do care about you. It doesn't always have to be transactional. So come to our gallery, which is free, where we have free drinks. And so that's a way to like still celebrate them and invite them in, and I don't have to give them as much time as, needed. So it's kind of like a nice way to be like, we really do care about you, even though I don't always have the time to be best friends with like thousands of people we see a year.
Yeah.
So
Is it ever hard maintaining the relationships with clients?
in regards to like keeping them as clients.
Yeah, like, and I found like returning clients. I'm like, oh, I forget your name, but I remember what I tattooed on you.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially during the pandemic, like I've only seen like this much of like half of the people during that time. And so they're like, "Do you remember me?" And then they show me and I go, "Yes, Rebecca." Yeah. So it's like, and they're usually very, very graceful in it. They're like, "Hey, I know you see like so many people, but," and I once they start talking to me, I do oddly remember, I'm like, "Oh my God, how's your puppy? It's so much big, it's got to be bigger now." So I feel like I do retain most information.
Did you have any art background before you wanted to get into tattooing, or like how did you decide I'm gonna do this?
I definitely was drawn to art. So I went to school for international marketing and graphic design. And once I graduated, I actually got picked up into the tech world and was recruited by Apple and worked for them for a long time. And I think that kind of helped me build a blueprint of what running a business is like. But it made me sad because I missed creating. I was like triaging and finding solutions. I wasn't even creating solutions. So I was getting tattooed for the first time in a long time because I was actually making pretty good money out of college. And my friends were kind of like, "Why aren't you in this industry? You get to connect with people, you get to create every day. It's basically graphic design on the fly. It kind of checks all the boxes." And I was like, that absolutely makes sense. And then I kind of pursued to get a apprenticeship.
Did you just go shop to shop, or did you get tattooed by people and you were like, oh, I kind of connect with you. Maybe I could see if you would mentor me.
I wish it was like that. That's probably the best way to do it because you want to be mentored by someone you look up to, someone that's going to inspire you. This was just kind of happen chance. Like one of my friends at the time was like, my uncle owns a shop. He wants, at the time I was identifying as she, her. They're like, they want a female in there. That should have been red flag number one. I was like, oh fuck. And I was like, okay, let's go. And they saw my paintings and they let me in right away. And the rest was kind of history.
So what was your medium whenever you're starting off? Especially like you said you were working at Apple. Did you make art outside of working? It's kind of hard to balance that.
It was a little easier at Apple because it's like, remember these days, because you're an artist, like remember when you would have like a 9 to 5 and then you could just live your life and leave your work at work, so I could just like leave the computers at work and then go and paint and do whatever I wanted and then go back to work. And now it's like you're constantly creating for this group of people and you're never not working. And so with a corporate job, it was a lot easier to like kind of compartmentalize my life. So I was painting all the time. I was doing a lot of spray paint. I really like the street art aspect, especially then. A lot of watercolor and just acrylic, I think.
Did they teach you like traditional tattoo style, or were they just like draw, 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 clean, and then here's a machine, go at it?
It was definitely like, here's tubes, you're gonna scrub these, and then it's like you're gonna make us needles, you're gonna solder those, and maybe you can watch us tattoo for like an hour and hand me paper towels. And there was really no like real curriculum or enriching education. It was like at the time, it was more feminine facing, like you're the cute girl that like hopefully draws in clients and you can model for our shop and all this stuff. But it wasn't enriching. Like I started to get that by seeking out other people I looked up to after I kind of got going.
What was the hardest thing when you started tattooing? I'm assuming you were taking walk-ins. Did you have anything that was like super difficult for you to like I had a problem with getting my lines super crisp and I've been working on that as like an apprentice. What was your obstacle when tattooing?
As an apprentice, I think getting people to trust me to do projects. Like, they want to see the proof is in the pudding. They want to see that you're capable of doing that, right? And you don't want to steer them in the wrong direction by misleading them and get yourself into something bigger than you're ready for. But so I was just constantly drawing, like it was kind of like when social media was taking off, which makes me feel like a relic. So I would take an obnoxiously big sketch pad and I would draw most of it at home and get like all the details in. And then I would take like maybe 10% left of it and take my time drawing it at like a coffee shop. So people would walk by and see it and it would start a conversation. And then I'd try to pitch it. Like, oh yeah, I really want to do this as a tattoo because it proved that I could already create it.
Mhm.
And that's how I would get clients to do like cooler projects with me. So I
Have
think just trust was hard.
Yeah. Have you traveled a lot? Have you gone to any conventions or anything? And if so, what has been your favorite convention or even just guest spot that you've done?
I've definitely used to do a lot of conventions. That was kind of like the biggest form of connecting before social media. So it was like really profound to like meet a lot of really lovely humans. I feel like that's shifting. People might argue that, but I feel like you can connect a lot more through social media. Travel, I think, is still quintessential because you're going to learn things that you can't learn off of social media. You pick up different habits, different supplies that they use. So um, I've worked in Paris, London, Australia, Iceland, all over the country. And I think probably my favorite, I had a really good time in Sydney, Australia, and I love the girls in Iceland. Iceland was super fun.
Do you still use coil machines today? What's your go-to machine?
My go-to machine is a rotary. So the second Cheyenne came out with a rotary pen, I saved up and bought that one and I haven't looked back. I love the ability of like wireless. It's a little less cumbersome to pack and travel with. Um, Electromagnetic machines will always have a place in my heart, but do I want to sit there and file so the connection happens and like tinker and do all that when I have such a high volume? I feel like that wouldn't serve me well because it would just take so much time and people were paying per the hour and I don't want to charge them for me trying to triage. So I will always love them, have heart for them, but it just doesn't serve me well.
Do you have a specific ink brand that you really like?
I'm kind of an ink harlot. I use whatever I think is the most vibrant. So it's like that's across the board. Like I think Eternal ink, like their lipstick red is like been profound
Dude, that
forever.
is my favorite. That's
I
my most used color.
Yeah, probably it is very popular. I love like peacock blue, and then it's like world famous. I really like. So as I've traveled, I've learned that there's a lot of inks still because the FDA doesn't really police anything in the United States yet. So in Paris and London, like in the UK, there's only so many inks that are actually legal. And so I try to stick to what's legal there because they know something we don't here. And so that's usually Eternals on top of it and world famous inks.
Do you do a lot of custom designs or do you ever do any designs and you're like, okay, this is something I want to do. I'd like to tattoo this. Or is it just pretty much you're booked for custom?
So a little bit of both. So I feel like as I've gotten older in my career, which has like been glorious, is that people are like, here's all the ingredients. Can you bake a cake with it? And so it's like, oh, these are all the things I love, but do it with your style. And so that's what I normally get. But if I actually have some time, I do try to like draw stuff and be like, these are things I'm passionate about. Would anyone love to give it a home? So either one, they come out custom, but I do have more ingredients more often.
Is your guys' shop, I wasn't completely clear on this, is it a private studio or do you guys do walk-ins at all?
It is a private studio. It's, kind of in like a high traffic area in Denver. Colfax is a pretty busy road, so we like to keep the doors locked. I call them tumbleweeds, just so it's like once you enter this place, it's quiet and calm and you're not interrupted. Especially if you waited like a year and a half to sit in the chair, it's like you don't want someone being like, "Hey, how much for a sleeve?" Then you have to take all that time to answer that.
Did you
So
decide through your experience of working at walk-in shops to make your studio private? And what's the benefits and cons to having a private studio?
I think it's really about personalities too. Like some people really love designing on the fly. They don't want to have to like spend their whole lives, it is tedious, like drawing and drawing and drawing, as opposed to someone coming in and you're like, cool, I had a good night's rest. I can just draw whatever you need. And so it's like, I definitely like the idea of having stability. And so pre-booking and having that allocated feels good for me. And that's not always great for everybody else. Some people are like, that is stressful to be a year or 2 years out because I need flexibility. I need to live my life. So I just, for my personality type, that's what I like. That's what my artists kind of gravitate towards that, like minds find each other. And so we all feel a little better with stability. But that doesn't mean that's the end all be all. It really comes down to like, what serves you best in the long run. And walk ins can be beautiful. They're very beautiful connections. It's kind of like speed dating you have these connections and you go, and they can spread that like great experience that they had with you and then bring in more clientele. But it's like we are fortunate enough to have such a strong clientele that we don't necessarily need to do that, even though we would appreciate it. So it's like just depends on where you are in your career and all that. So
The question I was trying to ask was, do you ever have problems with your employees, like them having clientele, you being a private studio and all? Because I've known other people who've started at a private studio and they really relied on those walk-ins.
so I think the gist of it before it froze was like, are the wolves at the shop doing okay as well?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. With like it being a private studio and all, I know so many people who rely on walk-ins, and it is hard to go and switch to a private studio.
Yeah, I mean that is definitely I've seen that across the board in Denver because I do feel like there's like monster corporate type studios that just feed off of walk-ins. And when those artists feel like they're ready to graduate and kind of, expand their portfolio and go through to a like maybe a calmer space, they have such a hard time marketing themselves because they were never taught to market themselves because I kind of feel like those corporate shops cripple them because that's a way to keep them and they never like encourage it. And so I do feel like there's this little transition when I adopt these younger artists where like, wait, I have to be on social media now. And you're like, yes, like you are your own business at the end of the day, no matter where you are. And the best way to set yourself up for success is to start marketing yourself. But like, we're very fortunate that our shop has such high volume that people will email and they're like, I don't care who it is. I just want to get a piece there, which is really sweet. And so we've been fortunate enough to have like this reputation that anyone wants to work with anybody. So everyone we hire is usually very, very busy off the bat.
That's awesome. So you were talking about your apprenticeship earlier, and I was wondering if you had an apprentice one day, what would you teach your apprentice through your shared experiences from the past?
So I do have an apprentice. Her name's Megan Donahue. We called her our wolf pup, but I think she's kind of like a teen wolf right now. And basically, with a bad apprenticeship, you are handed an education, like a double education. You get what you need from it, and you get what you'll never do again. And if you see it in that light, it's a very, very lovely gift. It's the best way to get through it emotionally, right? So I basically took all the things that I'd never repeat again and followed through on that. And I wanted to take all the things I felt missing and put that into her curriculum. So we treated it kind of like a college course. So every morning, very early, we would meet, we would go over class together. We'd have her take notes and we'd go over different lessons. And then we would talk about the type of thing that we're going to apply it to. And then I'd have her apply it in front of me. And then she would have homework for the following day to research. And then we'd recap and make sure that the research was correct. And then she'd have the data observe a little bit and ask questions. But, I don't want to not answer questions correctly when she's watching because I feel like I kind of got a half-ass answer when someone was tattooing. They're like, oh, like bigger needle because they're focused on the art, right? So I'd have her write down like 5 to 8 questions while I was tattooing, and then I could revisit it in the morning when I was like more consciously aware.
Do you ever feel like that's a lot of work to put into that? I haven't heard a lot of people give that answer. Are you ever kind of overwhelmed? I mean, you have to tattoo, run the shop, and your family life, and then on top of that, you do like actual classes with your apprentice. I mean, that's awesome.
I mean, it's honestly, like some days you're like, man, it is rough to get up early, but you're in the trenches with the apprentice too. Like I lucked out. I had like probably the best apprentice you could ever have. Like she's an art student as well, so she knew how to take feedback really well, constructive feedback, and she's very driven. And so it's like we both show up like, I'm tired. She goes, me too. And I'm like, let's order coffee and then let's get to it. And we opened up her books last time. And if we took one client every day, she would be booked for 4 years.
Oh wow.
Like crazy. Like this woman is just a lovely human. And then you add on talent and drive and like her marketing. And it's just like I couldn't have been more happy with like the connection I have with this person. Like she's probably gonna be my best friend, for the rest of my life. Like we have a connection, which is lovely.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that that's what you're doing. That gives me hope for other apprentices out there.
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
I was going to ask how the health department works there and overseeing apprenticeships and just shops in general.
So the health department in Denver, so the health department across everywhere is so different, which
Hmm.
is insanely frustrating because like health is health. Like every hospital has every standard for the most part. So it's like, why wouldn't that be for tattoo shops? So the city and county of Denver is more strict than any other county in Colorado, which doesn't make sense to me. But they're really great. So it's like she has to act just like a tattoo artist. Like she's around bloodborne pathogens. She needs to have that knowledge and safety. So the first thing we did when she first started working is we had her take her bloodborne pathogen test and then we had her get licensed because I don't want someone that doesn't understand cross contamination or I'm not trying to put her in an unsafe situation or us. So we just threw her into that right away. And then we built from safety onto like switching mediums, in knowledge. So
So is there like so like in Oklahoma, because like you said, it's since it's not a federal thing, every single state is different in how the health department oversees it. But in Oklahoma, it's 1,500 hours in a shop, no touching equipment, no bloodborne pathogens, nothing. And then you take a test with the health department, and then you actually get to do your bloodborne pathogens and tattoo. How is it like there? Do they give you a certain time range for apprenticing or?
so it's not documented hourly. I've known that in I think that's in Minnesota too.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
And probably Oregon, you actually have to go to tattoo school.
Hmm.
So even if I've been tattooing for 11 years, if I move there, I have to take the school. So, which is pretty wild. So this is just like you take your bloodborne pathogen test and then you get your license and then they're like, you're good to go.
Wow.
which, which probably is like job security for why I have so many cover ups.
I don't know if that's a good or a negative thing. I don't know. I think for I don't know, like Texas has I've learned from talking to people, the shop themselves has a license, but nobody else has licensing, so people can just start on day one. That's
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
wow.
that's I definitely think they're like honing in on it. I would not be surprised if like despite popular belief, I don't know which way I swing more than the other, but I think it will become a college course.
Oh wow,
I
yeah.
don't know. I think like at the end of the day, as long as people are being safe, that's what I care about. Like not everyone can be an artist, not everyone can transfer mediums. That they'll weed themselves out. But as long as they're practicing safely, that's what I care about. And that's what a school would teach. And so it's like we can spread less disease. And then if you make it as an artist, you make it as an artist because it's already very, very tough, very competitive. So I think the rest will shake out. But yeah, if they can encourage that further, I'm all for it.
Do you think having, because you say that you're from art school, and actually, I almost every single person I've interviewed has gone to art school, and then you said your apprentice has gone to art school, which is crazy because when I was thinking about getting in the industry, I was told not to go to art school and to just go into the industry. Do you think a background in art school and like even just having that knowledge of putting yourself, like you said, it's a business, you have to run social media. Do you think that's been really helpful and that other people should do that too when coming into this industry?
It's that one's tricky. That one's a tricky answer because I'm always like, yes, higher education, but like not everyone has that privilege. There's like education can come in so many different forms. It can come with experience. And like, so people who didn't go to art school, my best advice is travel because you're going to get an education from different shops, different cultures, different styles, different techniques. Like, so you can be like submerged and enriched in the industry you want to be in. But it has been very, very helpful to understand like there is still a business side to art. I say tattooing is 10% of tattooing. The rest is all marketing, managing, designing, working with people, communication, and all that. And so that's a hard one because I think people are like, I'm going to tattoo and make money. It's a lot harder than that. It's a lot of peopling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like having the background of knowing that it's still a business and being able to take feedback and being able to pivot and like expand and be okay knowing like this art is like kind of a fad and that's okay. You can go into this. Like that's a big part of the art school that I went to. And so that makes me a little more flexible, where I do see some artists are very rigid and they're stuck in their ways and they are becoming a little more obsolete and like kind of drowned out in social media. Like the fire hose is on. There's so much being fed to our social media. If you're not, savvy enough to kind of pivot and make your name and like kind of go with the trends, it's going to be a problem for your business. So it has been helpful. That doesn't mean it's the only way.
So, talking about the only way, do you think so with the rise of like TikTok and Instagram and everything like that, there's been a lot of people that I've met who buy machines off of Amazon and they start tattooing in their homes because they get educated through other tattoo artists, like through like here's how to wrap your machine and here's how to clean stuff. So they're just like, I can't get an apprenticeship. I'm just gonna do this at my house. How do you feel about that? What do you think is the best way if somebody wants to get into this industry to get into it? Is it to look for an apprenticeship, to go to a tattoo school? Like, what would you say from your experiences?
I mean, you're working with bodies, and it's like, let's just remove the fact that it's like a sacred art, right? Because that gets emotional. You like when you break it down, you're working with bodies. So if I were to talk to a surgeon and they said, "Oh, I learned how to do this on YouTube," I wouldn't really feel comfortable with that because you're breaking skin, you're spreading pathogens, you could be learning bad habits. Like at the end of the day, I don't feel like that's safe. I think it's got to be a hands-on education. And then you sprinkle in this is a sacred trade that should be passed on from like one craftsman to another. And so it's like that becomes like a very intimate, beautiful moment that I would love for everybody to have. Is it very difficult? Yes, because we're all really tired and working with people is hard, and like finding an apprentice you align with is hard, but it's not impossible. Like seek out the people that you admire, keep talking to them, open up that dialogue. If they're not taking an apprenticeship, they might know someone that is. I recommend people to other shops all the time. Like all of the shop owners, we do communicate with each other. They're like, hey, what do you think of this person? I go, I think they're lovely. You should talk to them. So it's don't give up, but be smart. Like I want someone who's going to honor someone's body. Like someone, if anyone tattooed outside of a shop applied for an apprenticeship, I know a lot of us would say no, because it's easier to teach someone from scratch than to reteach bad habits. And so it's just not safe. It's not respectful of your community. Just don't do it.
Great freaking answer. Couldn't have said it better myself. I think my last question for you is for any people who are wanting to get into the tattoo industry or apprentices already, do you have any advice for specifically females, POC, or any queer people in the industry?
It's I don't know about advice. I guess maybe I could be a cheerleader. Like it's gonna be really hard. There's gonna be really tough humans, and they're not always going to align with you. Maybe not like when you're young and you're in the industry, you're like, I want everybody, I want to tattoo everybody. And not everyone's gonna like your work, and that's okay. Like stay true to yourself, stay true to your craft. Like you'll find your people. They will find you and they'll be your best cheerleaders. And if that person doesn't respect or appreciate you, it's fine. It's hard to let that go because it is so personal, but like there'll be others. Like keep true to yourself, keep your character intact, your integrity, and it will all come together. Just hang in there.
That's a great answer. That was all of my questions. I appreciate you so much for making this happen. I really appreciated this talk. You were so lovely. I hope to
You
keep
like
this
this.
relationship blooming.
Yes, I got to go tattoo. So perfect timing on an ending. So
All right. Bye.